That should be good, yeah. Hello, everybody. So my name is Elie Saliba. I'm a PhD student at the Muséum National d'Histoire Naturelle in Paris, France. And I will be presenting the results of my PhD research that took form into the creation of software named Lognom to assist in the decision-making and management of zoological nomenclature. So to make sure that everyone, sorry, I'm fighting a seasonal allergy, so sorry for my voice. To make sure that everyone is aware of what we're talking about and that there's no vocabulary issues, zoological nomenclature is a discipline that is in charge of managing and regulating the names, the scientific names of animals. We inherited this discipline from Linnaeus, and the current fourth edition of the International Code of Zoological Nomenclature provides the guideline to apply the rule of nomenclature. Zoological nomenclature is very important, especially in databases, as names are still the best way of reaching information in these databases. So here, for example, the Tasmanian devil, which scientific name is Sarcophilus harrisii. For anyone searching any information on that animal, using the scientific name is the quickest way to find them in databases. If you missed Richard Pyle's presentation last year, I'll try to be very quick to make sure that everyone is on the page about the vocabulary. In zoological nomenclature, an available name or an available work is one that is correctly introduced, that is basically respects the rules of the code. The equivalent in botany for the botanist is validly published name. A valid name in zoology, however, is the one that is to be used to designate a taxon, especially when there are competition in between many names. This valid name in botany is the correct name. A work is a publication that has a role in taxonomy or nomenclature, and a type specimen is a specimen that is used to know how to apply a name to a taxon. There's another very important difference between zoology and botany, is that in zoology we have something called groups or series of ranks, and that we have 3 of them that have different rules that apply depending on which series we're talking about. So, for example, we have the species series, which contains the species and subspecies rank, the genus series, which contains the genus and subgenus rank, and the family series, which contains anything under superfamily and over genus. And there's something very interesting in the structure of the codes rule, which was the beginning of the reflection which led to the research, is that there are many steps that have to be followed. So for a name to be valid, it has to be first it has to be found in a work that is considered published by the code, available. The name itself must be available. Then that name must be potentially valid to be valid in the end of the decision process. And that structure that looks like a decision tree, we can find it again in every step of the rules. So, for example, if we look inside the availability of a name, we can see that there are some elements, such as, for example, the presence or absence of a description or diagnosis for a name that is currently introduced. It has to be available to have an accompanying description or diagnosis. And for example, it should not be accompanied by a disclaimer, otherwise the disclaimer would make the name unavailable. To make things even more complex, depending on the date on which the name was published, the rules change. So for example, a name published before 1950 can have an anonymous author, but after 1950 cannot have an anonymous author, otherwise it would be unavailable. This whole elements led to the idea that the code should be translatable into algorithms because it really looks like a decision tree. And that thought led to the creation of Lognom, for Logiciel de Nomenclature in French, or Nomenclatural Logbook in English, a software whose aim is to calculate based on the user's input if a name is available, valid, or the name or a work is available or valid, and also it provides other tools. To be more precise, the software is divided into 4 elements. It can verify for a name that is not yet published if all the elements are present to make sure that the name is available. So that part is particularly useful for reviewers and editors in journals. It will also check the availability conditions on an already published name, the validity in between many names that have been already entered into the system before, and it also provides some tools to determine if names are homonyms under Article 58. So these are species names that look like each other but are not real, but are to be considered homonym while not being really homonyms, and genus names and some help to determine a genus name grammatical gender, and if a name is to be considered a forgotten name under Article 23.9 of the code. So this is what the software looks like. It's a succession of lists and checkbox to make sure that every dimension of a name is correctly entered, and based on what the user will put in these fields, it will provide an answer. So here, for example, on an imaginary case, we have a name that has that isn't introduced with corresponding description, which in 1804 is already sufficient to make it unavailable. Moreover, the software also provides some warnings in case some recommendations are not followed, and if there are some spelling mistakes that should be corrected. All over the software are some help and advice for the user to be able to use the software in the best way possible. And this is what the validity of a name looks like. So here, once again, you have to choose in between the 2 names that are provided, and you have to choose between, you can enter as many names as you want. So here for the 2 names that are provided and all the elements that are relevant to test the validity of a name. And once again, it will provide the answer. So which name should be valid? Here it's a simple case of priority, and calculate if the synonym is an objective or subjective synonym based on the typification instruction given beforehand. So out of the 480 instructions given by the code, 230 of them are already fully included in Lognom. The missing elements are of 2 types. Some of them are non-computable because they rely on semantics and language issues and a lot of interpretation. So, for example, the concept of usage is really hard to compute or fully make it fully automatic. And some of them will be eventually added. So, for example, typification management, when to designate a neotype, when to designate a lectotype, if it's necessary. Homonymy management, the determination of a date of publication if there is a conflict on that, and the rest of the recommendations that are not already in the software. As for perspective, on the short term, it would be the addition of the missing rules, obviously, the possibility of sharing files with your colleagues and work simultaneously. I would also like to publish a library of functions, so some single elements of the software can be retrieved by people for reusability, and validation by the International Commission on Zoological Nomenclature, to make sure that the software is represents well all the rules of the code, and also prepare it for the new edition, for the 5th edition of the code, which should be coming in the upcoming years. In the long term, I hope to develop a close link with ZooBank, the database of the Commission, to make sure that all the elements in ZooBank are correctly applied, and maybe reach a kind of possibility for intra-community collaboration, and make it possible to create a list of available names from the taxonomist work directly, and have it integrate either in that form or in the form of the rules that have been extracted in functions into the workflow of taxonomists and database curators. So it's almost ready for the beta version to be released and for everyone to test it. I still need a couple weeks or something like this to finish some legal stuff and the security checks that are necessary. And it's I will ask for a bit of patience. It's basically a one-man project from the beginning to from the front end to the back end. So it should be available soon. If you are really curious, I can show you the alpha version if you really, really want to see what it looks like. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. I'm really curious. Great talk. I'm taxonomy nomenclature creator from University of Queensland, and I'm really interested in what you've done. And my understanding that the primary purpose of the tool currently is just to check the validity of existing published names, but you're planning to use it as a registration portal or aiding in the registration of names to Zoobank. Is it correct?
Some elements of it that might be included in Zoobank to make sure that everything is correctly.
Yeah. So when people are basically, designating, proposing new names, so my understanding that you would like it to be integrated with Zoobank, but that will actually assist with validation of names.
Exactly.
So let's say before people even publish it. Like, let's say, manuscript.
That depends on what the Commission wants exactly with Zoobank and what will be the guidelines for the 5th edition.
Because that looks like, perfect tool aiding actually and guiding people and assisting.
That's what I wish.
Otherwise, your published name is unavailable because it doesn't meet ABC criteria. And, I guess that's what we're dealing with also in procurative court at the moment.
In a way, that's exactly what what I hope to see is that we have this issue in nomenclature is that when a mistake is made, it's never forgotten. It's not, we cannot get over it. So what
I know perfectly what you mean.
So the idea is if we can limit the maximum if we can limit to the minimum the mistakes that are made, these checks and these controls, that will be helpful in the long run.
Thank you. Yeah, will be good to chat with you later.